When he came out, he was not the same. There was too much baggage he brought from Rikers with him. The memory of beatings, starvation. There was times when he wasn't even allowed to take a shower for 2 weeks. He was angry. He started getting real paranoid. And his life just spiraled from that. My name is Venita Browder, and I'm the mother of Khalif Browder. Khalif was on his way home. A police car stopped, and I'm assuming the guy who made the complaint was in the car and told the police that Khalif had robbed him of a backpack. Khalif kept saying, I don't know this guy, I didn't rob him. He was told that they were gonna just go to the precinct to kind of sort things out. Well, that sorting out took 3 years. We went to court. We had a legal aid. And the legal aid told me from the beginning that it was a BS case. He said, don't worry about it, it's a BS case. But meanwhile, my son is being held at Rikers. He would tell me things when I would visit him about being beat. He told me, Ma, I gotta fight. If I don't, they're gonna think I'm soft. I gotta fight. All it did for Khalif was get him in more trouble and more days in solitary. Imagine being locked up 23 hours a day. This is your life. 4 walls, that's it. He couldn't take it. They told him, we're gonna break you. That's what they told my baby, that they're gonna break him. And in reality, they did. At first, you could see he was relieved, that he was home, he could do what he wanted. He started Bronx Community, and he was doing okay, but then, I mean, he was really out of it, and he couldn't keep it up. He quit. He felt that everybody was out to get him. Everybody was a police plant. He stopped speaking to friends. He would get real angry. And then there were times where he would just, this look would come over him, and he would just like stare. It was a Saturday morning. It was just me and Khalif, and I hear him upstairs doing all this moving around, and I'm like, maybe Khalif is positioning the furniture to get comfortable. I didn't pay attention, because when Khalif is upset, he paces. Then all of a sudden, I heard this boom. I run upstairs. I didn't see anything. I ran into the next room, and the air conditioning cover was kicked out, and I just saw something hanging. I ran back downstairs, and as I opened the backyard door, Khalif was hanging there. I miss my son. I miss him so much.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. I played that emotional piece so you could feel the drama that's engulfed in Rikers Island. It's a place of demonic force, and you can feel it in this mother expressing. Everybody's heard about what Khalif went through. He spent 111 days in solitary confinement, was it?
Yes, about 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
In solitary confinement. Now we have with us today, our guest today, family member Victor Pate. We actually did a show with the mother and the brother.
Hakeem, yes.
All right, so this is family here, the emotional effect. And we have with us today Justine. Is that Justina, who actually worked at Rikers for 9 months. She couldn't take it after that. And she's a kind spirit. You can feel it in her vibrations, and why she would ever want to go to a place like Rikers and work, because she wanted to help. She wanted to introduce yourself, Justina.
Thank you. So yes, I started working on Rikers Island last year, December 2023. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I really wanted to go and see how it really is on the inside and help those individuals. That's what I was always interested in doing.
And you saw this, I had you as a crusader after seeing a Browder documentary. Mm-hmm. You decided to go and help.
Yes.
Was that part of the incentive?
Yeah, definitely. That story really impacted me. I remember hearing about it when it first came out, his story, and watching the documentary. Mm-hmm. But I did think, because of what happened to Khalif, that things in Rikers changed. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's a lot that like the public doesn't know about what's really going on in Rikers, because they do try to keep it as a secret. And it's just, you know, the location where it is. It's like cut from the whole New York. Mm-hmm. So I thought like things got better. I knew it was going to be tough working there, but I didn't know it was going to be what I witnessed.
And mostly you witnessed hell.
Yes, so I was the clinical supervisor of the mental health units, and going in, you know, I thought this was a mental health unit. I did not expect that the patients there were going to be locked in their cells for weeks and weeks and even months. That was very surprising. While I was working, I would hear my patients scream, bang, because they were locked in. And when they were locked in, they didn't have access to any of their medications. Mm-hmm. And these are people with a severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder. Mm-hmm. So while they're deadlocked, because that's the term that the officers would use, they're not getting any of their medications. They're not even able to come out. It's not like they're locked in for 23 hours. They don't come out at all. They are not able to take a shower, make a phone call, and because of their mental illness and being locked in, they decompensate. So they will start smearing feces in their cells, and then there's flies, maggots. Ooh. And then like this is how they wake up in the morning. This is how they go to sleep, with like feces in their cells and flies, and this is where they eat their breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
I've never heard it described as that.
Yeah.
Flies and maggots.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
because
actually,
of the feces.
what else would you have in there?
Yeah.
But I never thought of it that way.
Right.
All these years you never mentioned flies and maggots.
Only because I've never been in that circumstances where I was in a mental health unit. I mean, of course, I've been in solitary confinement.
Right.
But not in a solitary confinement mental health unit, which is a totally different unit.
Right. Like I said, these individuals have severe mental illness.
Actually,
So
okay.
then, because they don't have access to their medications, and being locked in a small cell would impact anyone. But these individuals, especially because they're so vulnerable because of their severe mental illness and them not getting their medications.
So it's not a cure. There's no cure there. You were you were trying to help people,
Yes.
and you had no help.
So it really depended. You know, there were very few officers that did try to help. I don't want to paint this picture that like all of the officers on Rikers are horrible. There's very few exceptions, and it's really difficult for them also because they want to do the right thing, but then their coworkers look at them a certain way and maybe call them soft or that they're getting manipulated by the patients. But I would have to rely on these officers, and on my unit there were 2 officers that never gave me an issue and would lock everyone out. However, they were not always there. Sometimes they were on vacation, sometimes they called out, or sometimes because other officers would call out, they were not on my unit but had to be placed in another unit. So we couldn't just rely on that. We knew some officers would not let the individuals out, so we wouldn't even ask because we knew, okay, so-and-so is here. There's not even a reason. There's no point in asking. They're not going to let this person out. Let's wait. Tomorrow, so-and-so is supposed to be back at work. Hopefully they're on our unit. We'll ask them tomorrow.
Would you say, from your point of view, that people with any kind of mental issues who are incarcerated, that it happens there is not enough staff to take care of them, or the staff that's there is not properly trained?
So I think it's 2 things. So I thought there was not enough staff, but I was informed by like research and data that DOC has enough staff.
That's what the supervisor said.
No, that's like the research that's done by like advocates that like DOC, they have the budget, they have enough staff. A lot of the officers call out. So it looks like there's not enough because I believe they have unlimited sick days. So it looks like there's not enough staff because on the units.
So they can call in sick anytime they can.
Yeah, I think they have to have like a reason, I don't know, from a doctor, but I saw a lot of the officers had to do 3 shifts. And sometimes the officers that like I got along with.
How many
and
hours per shift? What,
yeah,
8-hour shift?
8 hours. And we would talk, you know, they would say to me like, if I have an event that I have to go for my child, if they ask me to do overtime, I have to say no, I can't go to the event. I have to do overtime because there's absolutely no one because somebody called out. So I think that is also the issue, the staffing. Like I guess people are calling out a lot because that's what it looks like. We're supposed to, on the mental health units, there's supposed to be at least 2 officers. Many times there was only 1 officer. And I think the training also, they're not trained properly in mental health. A lot of them would say, you know, this person's not really mentally ill, they're faking it, but I knew they really are mentally ill. A lot of times they would take things personal. You know, they, like somebody with the mental illness would maybe disrespect them, curse them out, and they would take it very personal. And I was cursed out before by my patients. I was disrespected. I was told once that the patient told me that he hopes my whole family dies, but like I didn't take it personal because I know this individual is severely mentally ill. You know, like I have that knowledge and experience, but they don't, so they would take things personal. And I would always think, I would always think like, why am I getting upset at this person? Like I get to go home and like be with my family and you know, have a nice life. Like they're in jail, like obviously they're not happy, you know, like not saying it's okay to disrespect someone, but these are individuals with severe mental illness who are on Rikers Island. Like obviously they're in their lowest point in their life.
What is the solution? Not just closing Rikers, but meanwhile, it's not going to be closed anytime soon. So you left with the intentions of trying to improve things.
Yes.
Of course. Because you were touched so that you had a mental, you were a product of your environment.
Hmm.
So 9 months, how much did it really affect you personally?
So it affected me greatly. I would go home, like think about it. I would talk to my family. My family was at one point like kind of tired of about hearing about Rikers, and of course I didn't, talk about certain patients because of confidentiality. Just overall what I saw, and in my profession, like we're told that we shouldn't take our work home because we
Right.
see so much, in any like social work field, not even just working on Rikers, but it was very difficult to separate. On the weekend, I was thinking about it. I had anxiety going into work, just like riding that bus, going over the bridge. Like it just looks so gloomy, like the sun is never shining there. Like it just is so depressing. And just going to work, like I dreaded going to work. Like I went because I had to, but it impacted me a lot. And I really wanted to help, and I saw that I was really not able to. And I knew that like I can't just walk away and not do anything. And that's why I made that decision that like when I do walk away, like I already had that plan. Like I already knew I was gonna go to the media, that I was gonna get in touch with certain people. Like I knew that when I put in my resignation, because like I told myself like I can't just leave and like just forget about all of it. Like I'm gonna do something. I know I can do more on the outside. This is why I'm leaving. And that was really hard because I'm a person that like sometimes I'm hard on myself and like I don't want to give up on things. So I felt like
Right.
I'm giving up. I felt like I'm abandoning my patients. I felt really bad because I felt like, like I'm just leaving them behind in this horrible environment and I'm gonna go home and be okay, but like they're stuck there. So like I felt really bad. It was a very, very difficult decision to resign. Like it was. Like I was very emotional when I told my supervisor I'm resigning. But there was especially a significant moment for me, and this is an example of a patient that I had on my mental observation unit, and this person was severely mentally ill and he was locked in over a month. He was in another unit, and in that other unit he was locked in, and he came on my unit locked in. The officers, they would use that term, they wouldn't say smearing feces, they would say that he likes to play with shit. So they said, oh, he's coming from the other unit, he likes to play with shit, he's deadlocked. I worked with some officers for weeks to finally get him out. He did okay for the whole week. He did behave oddly, he would stare, but this is because he was diagnosed with a severe mental illness, no access to medication, being locked in a cell. When he was locked in, smearing feces, he would even scream, rip his mattress apart. So when we got him out, he was doing okay for a whole week. Monday, I come back and he's locked in. And I asked the officers what happened, and because they don't document this anywhere, because it's not supposed to be happening, they're like, we are not sure, but a female officer came on the floor and he was looking at her and he made her feel uncomfortable. So eventually I got him transferred to my smaller unit. He did okay there. He went to OMH because he was found unfit to continue with his court proceedings. He went there for a few months, he got his medications, he wasn't locked in, he came back a completely different person. He gained weight. We were able to have a conversation. It was really sad because he was blaming himself. He was like, I'm gonna take my meds. Don't worry, Justina, because I don't wanna do that crazy stuff that I did in the other unit to get myself locked in. And I told him like, no, like that was not your fault at all. You should have never been locked in the first place. But he was blaming himself. And it was really like emotional for me. And yeah, it was the day before I left and I was like, you know what? I'm making the right decision, like for leaving and going to do something about this. Like I said, I had this plan. My last day was a Friday. Monday, I was already talking to lawyers about the next steps, about what we're gonna do.
Before we go into that, I want you to play item 3 for me, and we'll come right back at you. Rikers Island, the inside story, what actually happened. to the people who are actually mentally ill.
The UN has already designated solitary as torture. But across the river, solitary confinement is still happening on Rikers Island. There is a great deal of misinformation and misunderstanding about solitary in New York City. But the reality is that no matter what terminology you use, people are facing the cruel and unusual punishment of isolation and carrying the damage of that treatment for the rest of their lives. People in solitary are denied human contact and connection, denied support, and come out of these deplorable conditions worse than when they went in. By no definition is this correction. It's just convenient cruelty.
What happened to me is still happening to others, as well as the collateral damages that not only happen to the persons themselves, but also to the families and the communities. My experience with solitary confinement is something that, unfortunately, I have not fully recovered from. I'm able to function, but there are collateral damages. When you take a person and you isolate them away from all other human contact, you create more than just decompensation psychologically and physically, right? And you don't have a person being able to come out oftentimes as well as they did when they went in. So what happens is that a person can go into solitary confinement that may not have a mental health issue, but because of the deprivation, the isolation that happens to a person when they're in solitary confinement, they come out with a psychologically damaged, and oftentimes that is very hard to come back from. They use solitary confinement supposedly to correct a person's behavior, when in fact that is totally opposite as to what happens when a person goes to solitary confinement. This is no way to deal with a person's issues, disciplinary issues, how they behave, because it doesn't correct anything. It only actually worsens situations, not only for the person, but also for the environment from which they came. This is totally contrary to anything that can be rehabilitative or transformative. So solitary confinement doesn't serve any purpose other than to punish.
We want to make sure we're clarifying and correcting a lot of misinformation that's out there. Our bill to ban solitary doesn't prevent someone from being removed from a situation or a space where they're dangerous to themselves or others, and it doesn't prevent separation from a space for the same. What it does is ban the isolation that's associated with long-lasting psychological damage that has not been proven to help change behavior, and it doesn't prove to make a space safer. We do know that you should be able to lose privileges if there's infractions, but you shouldn't lose your basic human rights.
Sometimes you may not even get your meal, right? You may not even get your shower. And it's just totally sensory deprivation that causes a person to spiral downward. So being in a cell by yourself 23 to 24 hours a day, lights on, no human contact, you begin to decompensate really, really quick.
Part of the reason that Rikers Island is in the crisis it is because it's out of sight and out of mind. And solitary is even more so. What we have to begin to acknowledge is that what's being done doesn't work. So we want to make sure we have a bill that protects and helps not just the detainees on Rikers, but also protects the people who work there, the medical staff, the clerical staff, and our correction officers, who often come from the very same neighborhoods. So it's not something that we can stand by and allow to happen, as we've seen people literally die. It's something that we have an opportunity to change, and we have to.
So, Victor?
Yeah.
You're an actual victim of this
Yes, I am.
solitary confinement we've been talking about.
Yeah, and that's why
Were you labeled as
I do work.
mentally?
No, definitely. I
You
wasn't
never
labeled,
got that close to it.
but I knew there was something wrong.
But
And
that
I just,
stuff can drive you crazy.
yeah, I just have to say to that, just all of
Right.
the information, all of the reports, the medical reports, the psychologist reports, all of them point to solitary does not do anything but exacerbate a circumstance or a situation. And like I mentioned, people go in there don't have a mental health issue, but they come out with one.
Yeah.
People who have mental health issues go in there and they get worse because there's no treatment. Prime example.
And sane people go in there trying to help.
Prime example.
Can come out crazy.
I mean, she just articulated that in terms of the condition. So you see how bad it is. You know, solitary confinement by itself is bad. And imagine people who have a diagnosed mental health issue being exposed to solitary confinement.
And that's what she
How
was
does that
exposed to.
how does that treat the symptoms or the issues or the stuff like? And then especially if they need medication of any type and then they don't get it, to me, you are complicit in a person's downward spiralness. If they die, you are complicit in their death, as happened numerous times on Rikers Island, and they are not being held accountable. They're not being held accountable. That you can do these things to human beings and you can treat people that are vulnerable the way that they do, and they continue to get away with it. This is why we got to do the work that we do to end it and ban it globally.
It reminds me of
recent
Donald
days-
Trump getting away with his garbage.
In recent days, we've had the mayor say that we need smaller jails in the boroughs, and we need to make sure that as opposed to having 6 police officers respond to a man with a knife, we should have somebody with mental health training respond to that case.
right.
And certainly the headlines of the last 2 days bear that out. The administrative decision making that's happening, and this is one of the questions I would ask you, do you see that decision making moving in the right direction so that those incarcerated people who need mental health professional care, that they're getting it, or are things getting worse, or are they just allowed to stay the same going on and on?
So I think they're getting worse, like what we've seen in the past 2 days with that individual who was released from Rikers and stabbed 3 people to death.
What happened?
It was in the city 2 days ago. An
Today's
individual was released from Rikers Island, severely mentally ill, and stabbed 3 random people. And I think,
right.
yeah,
right.
but
I
he
didn't know
did.
he was
Yeah, he was
he was
released.
released from Rikers.
Yes, to like
Not
Bellevue.
this time around, but previously he
No,
was in
no, a
Rikers
month
and
ago.
he was released.
He was
month
released
ago.
from a month ago from Rikers.
Right.
The same guy that killed those 3
Yes.
people.
But
He was put back onto the
Rikers,
street and committed 3 murders after they put him back on the street.
And he had
Yeah.
mental health diagnosis.
right?
issues.
So, but like I understand, like legally, Rikers couldn't keep him because he did his time. But he shouldn't have been released to the
Without
city
psychiatric care.
without any support, to like a regular shelter. Like, obviously, he's not going to take his medications. Very few people do if they're just, especially being on Rikers, come out without any support. Like somebody, like he was arrested before in the past. He was on Rikers. He was diagnosed with a severe mental illness. He should have been released with more support, maybe in like be put in like supportive housing where somebody could like watch over him and make sure like he took his medication in the morning, not just be released into the community without nothing.
And that goes back to the discharge planner, because you have a team that works on Rikers Island
So how
that
often
are
does this
called
happen?
discharge
Very.
planners.
Every day?
They tell discharge
Every
planners.
day they let mental people out.
Yeah, because if they did their time like legally, it would be illegal to
Can't
keep
keep them
someone.
incarcerated for
But if
mental
you-
illness.
Right,
That's their time.
If
right.
you're
But
right.
the problem is there's no supports in the community because they closed all the psych hospitals.
But they knew he was crazy.
They knew
Yeah,
that he
but they
needed mental
can't
health
legally
attention.
keep him.
That they knew.
Right, they knew he had a mental illness, but they can't keep him in Rikers because he has a mental
His time
illness
is-
if he did his time.
Because that's a
But-
lawsuit.
So
Right,
he
that
should
is-
go from Rikers to a mental institution.
Or
Support
I don't know his specific case, but he should be. In an ideal world, he would have never been in Rikers. He would have been in a psych hospital where
Yeah.
he's not released into the community and be stabilized there, get his medications, do well, and then he could reintegrate into the community with support.
But you were working for the psych unit of
Yes.
Rikers Island, right?
Yes.
So all that healing should have came from your unit.
Well, we can't
If
force.
he was properly diagnosed.
No, he was. I mean, I don't know if he was properly diagnosed or not. But even if somebody was, we cannot force people to take medications
Why not?
because that is the law in New York.
Wait a minute. Now, if you know somebody's sick and he doesn't take his
We
medication,
can't. we couldn't
can't
force
force them.
people on
Well,
Rikers to take their
Well,
medications.
that's something.
The only time somebody could be
Put
like,
him in solitary confinement for not acting
Yeah.
properly.
Yeah.
He's not acting properly, so you force the medication on him. I don't
no.
see
So
that
the
why you
only
don't
time
force-
somebody would be
Constitutional
like,
rights.
right. So the only time somebody would be like forced to take medications if they were admitted into a psych hospital involuntarily.
The police department can't do the punishment
Yes.
without having spoken
And
to
not
the psychiatrist.
everybody, right? And not everybody gets admitted into a involuntary hospitalization. That individual has to either be a threat to themselves or a threat to the public. And like I said, I don't know this individual's case. There's so many people that have a severe mental illness but may not be a threat to the public.
Do we have enough facilities for treating people
No.
with mental health
No.
in New York City?
No.
Okay, that
And they
becomes a
get-
problem because if I
Yes.
am in need of psychiatric help and I have to bang on 15 doors before I get the help that I need, what happens is in the interim, after the 10th time, I give up and I go back to sleeping in the subway.
Yeah, and all of my patients that I came across on Rikers, all of them were not under medications when they were arrested for their crime. I've never met one that was on his medication in a stable housing and got arrested. All of them were off their medications. And that's the problem. They just get released to the streets. Some of them may have a substance abuse issue and then they start using drugs because some people with a mental illness cope with their illness by
getting
using
high.
drugs. And then, we know the crises in New York City where drugs are available everywhere. And the individual lives in a shelter. There's nobody monitoring or like supporting that
crazy place.
individual. So that is the biggest problem. So I think like in an ideal world, the solution would be that these individuals do not go to Rikers because at the end of the day, it's a jail. Even if it's the best mental health, it's still a jail.
You're ill, so we'll lock you up
Yeah.
Instead of treating you.
instead of treating you.
What's your solution?
So my solution would be for the city to open psych hospitals. So when people get arrested who are severely mentally ill, they are in a psych hospital, not in a jail setting, where they can get the proper treatment. And
Well,
then
we
when
have fewer psychiatric beds now than we did 10 years ago.
yes, exactly,
But
that
more
is the
people who need it.
problem. And then when they get released into the community, maybe they're in housing where they're living there, but they're able to go outside, like slowly, not just released to the street and like good luck and like a Metro card or whatever they give you, and you're on your own.
It's funny because what you're saying is very much what the mayor was saying a few weeks ago at one of his press conferences.
Right, but the mayor can do something about that.
Can he take money from Rikers and put it to a psychiatric treatment?
Yes,
I don't
and
know.
that's what the campaign to close Rikers
That's
is
right.
because it would, the budget is so huge for DOC, it would save a lot of money because a lot of people would be released, and then that money can go into community services and community support.
Do these people share your thoughts on how to solve the problem?
You want to hear from me?
Yeah.
So I think what she said is an excellent idea, but here's the other piece to that, because before you get there, then you have a group of people that's made up of different disciplines of people that are considered discharge planners, which means that prior to me going home, I'm supposed to sit down with a counselor or whoever that team is, right, and talk about what kind of services that I'm going to be needing, medications, psychological counseling, social group, and all, and that's their job. They
is.
drop the ball. They let these people out or put them out, and they don't do no discharge planning. If they have a diagnosed mental health issue, there's no wraparound services like Justina mentioned that they need to come out with, or access to even get medications if they need, because they ain't got no Medicaid card.
Right.
They're
So-
supposed to make sure all that happens.
Yeah,
What was the
but
first thing-
also
Discharge
I've worked
planning.
with discharge planners on
I
Rikers,
want
and
to hear
they're
the first thing
yeah.
you did when you got out of there, because you had planned to do this before you left.
yeah.
You saw all these atrocities and you decided to quit, well, resign because you couldn't do what you wanted to do. And the only way you could be helpful is to go to a lawyer and do what?
So I was in touch with lawyers from the New York County Defenders, and I told them what was happening, and we talked about like the next steps, and they said that I can come out, you know, publicly with this or not, and I made the decision to come out publicly because then I was able to testify in front of the Board of Corrections on October 8th, and also a Daily News article came out about my experiences. So I spoke to them about like different steps we can take to get this story out.
Mm-hmm. And the after effects of all that?
What are the effects?
Yeah.
So-
What good did it do?
So the Board of Corrections, during my testimony, they seemed very concerned. They said they're going to investigate. The commissioner of DOC called in for a DOI investigation. So there is currently a DOI investigation going on to investigate this.
But wasn't any sort of investigation going on all the time?
Well, explain receivership, please. Explain receivership.
So-
and why?
So basically, and Rogers mentioned about the receivership, which means taking over the operation. Right. So for the last 3 or 4 years, right, there's been reports that were put out by they have a federal monitor that's already been appointed some few years, and his job is to report the conditions on Rikers Island and submit recommendations for improving. Okay, so these a couple of reports came out. There's some things that were said, right? He suggested some things, right? But the actual implementation of all of these changes never happened. So right now, Rikers Island is in the courts, right? In the federal courts, discussing the possibility of a federal receivership, which means the feds would take over the operation of Rikers Island
Not
and take
New
it
York
out of
State,
city hands.
federal government.
The federal government. Take it out of the city hand and give it to the government for them to operate Rikers Island.
What good does
That's
that
what's
do?
ongoing now.
What good does that do?
So I believe
I mean,
now,
especially with Trump in
Well,
there.
federal prisons are not as crowded as
Right.
New York City
Yeah.
prisons.
and they have more
And
resources.
it's someone from the outside, like looking in, right? Like observe.
An outsider come,
Federal
the
outsider.
federal coming looking at what the state's
Yeah.
doing.
Right, but
Okay.
also there has been no investigation into the deadlocking. So
what?
there was no investigation into the deadlocking, into locking people in solitary confinement. So when I testified, the DOC commissioner called for a formal investigation. So now they're investigating.
But there was a bill passed in January.
So that bill, which
Had nothing to do
Jamani
with-
was talking about, Local Law 42, which bans solitary on Rikers Island. That's the law that got passed. That's the law that the city council overrode the mayor's veto.
Right.
However,
That was
the
what was called what?
Local Law 42.
Local law 42.
But however, this is what happened. After it got passed in January, the bill's implementation date was July of this year. The mayor, the day before the implementation date came, he put in, that's currently active now, an executive order to suspend
Yeah.
the implementation of the law, and that's still in effect. He renews that every week.
Can anybody figure out why he did this?
This is oversight of Rikers, not just the psychiatric
There's
part.
Right. This
money
is the whole
involved.
Rikers.
There's
Right.
money
The whole
involved,
Rikers.
probably.
Whole right. Of course,
Millions
there's
of
always
dollars.
money involved.
Where's the money?
There's always money somewhere along the line.
What's the money angle in this?
So-
Stopping and closing of Rikers.
So here, the premise of this, right? Overcrowding, number one, okay? It's just why they say Rikers needs to be closed. We're up to 6,000 plus
Yeah.
people on Rikers
And they're
Island
adding
again.
more beds. They're
Again.
adding more beds to the
And
mental health
instead of them-
units.
You understand what I'm saying?
The place, the part you left.
Yeah, because last
How
week.
many people in that unit?
So there was 50. So the last
not
Board of
enough.
Correction meeting on November 12th, they said they're adding 10 more to every mental health unit because the population on Rikers is increasing. It's supposed to decrease, it's increasing.
And that's why they keep
Well,
telling me
the
they can't
last
close
guy
it.
If
you
they increase the
had on
population
here.
to 60, are they going to increase the staff? Are they going to use the same staff now has to deal with the
They
bigger
didn't talk
population?
about that.
The last guy you had on here. I
Gary.
forgot his- Gary. He said he was there in a population of 20,000.
Yeah, when Rikers was up to 20,000.
And you said
That was
it's up
back
to
in the
6
70s.
now?
But that was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
that's like in
And she's
in
referring
the
to
70s.
specialized housing for people with mental issues.
Right, but even when he was incarcerated, the population was lower. Since this mayor came into office, the population has been increasing and increasing.
Yeah, instead of it going down. So
Yeah.
to me, That's part and parcel of the plan to keep saying why Rikers can't be closed, because you keep adding more people, and you haven't even finished the borough-based jails yet. So come 2027, which is the targeted date for Rikers Island to be closed, you're not going to be able to do it, because what? You didn't build the borough-based jails. You didn't put in the financial resources that you needed to create the borough-based jail, as well as the mental health beds for people that will be coming out as a result. So to me, it's a big game right now. So it's always about money because it's about people's jobs. It's about them keeping control of the budget for the Department of Correction.
Because the budget is going to be lower when they build these borough-based jails.
They won't need that much money.
Yeah. And like I said, that money could be put into community supports, like better supportive
you said the
housing.
Federal, the
Receivership.
feds are going to put in receivership.
Well, they're contemplating it. And what's happening right
that
now?
wouldn't do us any good now.
No. What's happening right now, the city had a by-when date. They just went to court last week or Tuesday, anyway. And they were supposed to submit.
Yes.
The city was supposed to submit what their plans are and changing it. They missed the target date, so they gave them another week by which they were supposed to submit a report as to what you're going to do. How you going to continue to manage Rikers Island? What is your plan to bring down the violence?
I got a great question for all of us. How are we going to prepare for Trump as president in 2025?
Have our own 2025 project.
Yes.
That's how we combat him. We need our own 2025 project. Whatever that includes in terms of combating what we know is going to come down the line. You see all them clowns he's putting in office right now?
Yeah, the person
this is
from
like
the
a
wrestling to
hodgepodge.
the
Hey,
education.
Winston, you want this job? Hey, Rod, you want this job? Hey, Justina, you want this job? And he's just giving out jobs.
People that are
And all
not
of them is his
qualified, that
cronies.
don't have
He's having fun.
experience.
All of them are his
He's
cronies.
playing. He's
They're all
enjoying
rich people.
He's just jugging with us.
You think?
Like he,
But
he
he's
always do. That's
nominating
what he
them.
always
Like,
do.
I don't think that's a joke. He's actually nominating them. Dr. Oz,
Oh,
the lady,
no,
the
stop.
owner of the
This is
WWE to run
This
the
is his reality
education.
show.
Yeah.
Can you imagine where his mind is now, that he's gotten away with all this junk?
He's
He's
happy to sit
immune.
and count his coins because he's making big dollars off of this. And I
Look
think
what his buddy-
that's his motive, to make big dollars.
What about the guy next to him?
Well, that may be the competition that's unspoken. It's like sibling rivalry, you know. Mommy always liked you because you got more money
steal
than
more
me.
than you can.
I think that's a real competition between Elon Musk
The shame
and
of it
between
all.
the
Yeah.
incoming
Shame of it
president.
all.
And money is a big part of how they measure their manliness.
The shame of it
I
all,
agree.
as much as we have to complain about America, is the best thing out here. But by the time he's finished with us, I don't know where we're going to be.
Yeah.
I really don't
and
see.
you know what's really Damian Williams, right?
They're all
Yes.
with him.
So now he's leaving.
Yeah, that's what I heard also.
Yeah, he's leaving
Yeah.
now.
They're all with
One of the things that I often feel that our solutions lie in the future. Our children, I look to our children with hope, and I look to the parents to challenge them, because what our children know and what our children act upon very often is shaped by the parents. And if our children don't understand what this guy in the White House is doing, they're going to go right along because he promises to make them rich. Our children need to have conversations, and our adults need to lead those conversations so they are aware of who these clowns are,
facing,
20-something
that's
of them. I haven't seen a black face yet on that report of his appointees. And this is part of what we have to do. We have to have conversation with our children, and that empowers them so they can shape their future as opposed to it being shaped by some doddering billionaire.
I think it's all our fault.
It's correctable.
Black people didn't vote.
It's correctable. We can correct
That's
it.
what happened.
We did
The
not vote in
spiritual
sufficient numbers.
people on this planet didn't believe. Because she was a woman. It's that simple.
Yeah, we
They wouldn't
we
vote
fell
for a
down.
woman. If Hillary couldn't make it, how do you expect a black woman to make it?
But if we fell down, what do you do when you fall down?
Get up.
You got no choice.
Roll up or get up, right? One way or
January
another, right?
20th, I'm coming out.
Yeah.
January 20th, we're having a
That's
Martin
right.
Luther King
Marching,
affair
marching.
That's right, we gonna be
Marshall
there.
in Washington. And we're starting from the beginning.
We're gonna be
Yeah,
there.
I'm old enough to remember the March on Washington in
63.
63. I was 22
Then the
In the
20th
service.
anniversary in
in the
83.
Marine Corps.
86, the 25th anniversary, we were there.
I remember what it was like going down and looking at fountains saying colored only.
This
I
is
thought
what
it was
we
a
have to tell our
joke.
children. We have to
It was a
remind them.
joke.
If
Yeah,
you
I
don't like
talk
the
to
way
my
it's
daughter
going-
about it all the time. She knows what I did on Rikers. She thought it was like insane. She was like, "Mommy,
It's
they were
insane.
locking people in like that's." And she's only 7 years old.
How do
Yeah.
you fix it? She's not too
And
young
she's
to
so
have the
proud of
idea,
me.
right? How do
She's
you
like,
fix
"My
this?
mommy is amazing." She's like, "It's so good what you did." Like,
If
I
mommy
teach her.
fights
I
the
mean,
fight,
my
you
daughter
are
is
amazing.
biracial, so she knows like her history. She knows about. She loves Rosa Parks. Like, she knows all of that.
Oh, you-
We
you-
have to teach and empower the children.
Well, let me show the run one. I want to show you my first view of you, and I check out the people I bring on my show.
I want to see your daughter's campaign for mayor.
A kind spirit.
Right, right, right.
You're a kind spirit trying to do something right, and there are millions of us out here.
Yes, yes.
So then the opportunity came to work on Rikers, and I thought that since I want to do criminal justice reform work, I need to see what it's really like working there. And that's why I decided to take that opportunity. I knew it was going to be difficult because I read a lot about Rikers. I read Mary's book. I watched a lot of documentaries. I kept up with the news, but it was nothing like I expected. And it's different when you read about something and you're actually in it. So I started working on Rikers December 4th, 2023. And I resigned. My last day was September 20th. So that was about 9 months. And when I would tell people I'm going to work on Rikers, people would say, like, are you crazy? It's so dangerous. And I would say, well, I'm in the mental health unit. So it's a little different than being in the general population, because this is what I was told, that these mental health units have more mental health staff. There's not much violence. Patients are doing group, individual sessions. But like I stated, it was nothing that I thought it was going to be. So quickly, once I started working there, I saw individuals being locked in their cells. And at first, I thought that was unfair. But as I continued to work there, I saw that they were being locked in continuously, like week after week. When I first started working there, I thought, okay, maybe this is just for the day. But as time went on, I had patients who were locked in for over a month, 2 months. And that's when it really started to affect me. And I would see my patients in their cells locked in with feces smeared all over their cells, banging, screaming to get out. And a lot of times we would send them to Bellevue Hospital, because Bellevue does have a prison ward, but not always did Bellevue Hospital accept them, and they would come back and go back to that same cell. Or if the cell was cleaned, they would go to a different cell. However, they were still locked in. So then the behavior continued again. And a lot of times the mental health staff try to advocate for these patients and talk to the officers about letting them out. Some would listen to us and would work with us, and some would say, oh, I'll do it on Saturday, or not today because something happened on the unit. And then Saturday came, Monday came, and the individual was still locked in. So it was difficult because we had to also just navigate which officer is going to be on the floor that day, because we knew which officers will lock the individual out and which will not. And just working there really impacted my mental health, seeing this. I had my office in the back, and I wasn't able to even concentrate at times because I would hear one of my patients scream and bang all day, yelling, help, help, get me out. And it was very difficult to just pretend like this is not happening and do my work. I even called my mom once while I was having lunch, and she heard this individual scream, and she was like, oh my God, Justina, like, who's that screaming in the background? So it was all day and night. And I went into this job because I really wanted to help people that are incarcerated. and I thought I could make a difference, which I did make some differences, some small differences, but I saw how this is just a pattern and this is continuing being done. And I really felt like I can do more not working there and doing more from the outside than being there. We had patients come out. Like, for example, one patient came out for a whole week and he did okay. And then I come back to work on Monday and he's locked in. And I asked the officers what happened. And since this is something that the officers, that DOC is not supposed to do, lock in people who are severely mentally ill, they kept no record of it. So a lot of times the officers couldn't tell us what happened. So in that particular case, the officer said, I wasn't here on the weekend. I don't know what happened, but I was told another female officer came on the unit to get water and he was staring at her and made her really uncomfortable. So they locked him back in his cell.
Like they couldn't find him, right?
No, no, like they didn't know they were working there.
There you have it. So, tell me about what's the effects on you today?
So when this story first came out, I was having like nightmares, and it wasn't like nightmares about
How long have you been away from Rikers now?
So my last day was September 20th. So it's been
This year?
Yes, this year.
So you just got out.
Yeah. So last year,
a fresh fish.
Yeah.
I bring fresh fish.
so last year at this time,
No more nightmares?
so I still do, but not like
You're
I did.
looking for one of the officers to pop up on you.
Yeah, so I was having nightmares that I would like run into the officers because I was told that right now
So
I'm
what if
the
they
most
see this
hated person.
show?
Huh?
What's going to happen when they see this show?
I mean, I was already in the newspaper. They all
Yeah, it's
read
already
it.
out.
Oh,
Pub- it's
Yeah, it was
public
already
knowledge.
public.
Yeah.
But I was told after the story came out that I'm the most hated person in Rikers right now, and that the officers are upset with me, and even the mental health staff are upset with me. That's what I was told.
Why you're telling the truth?
Yes.
And they
So-
should be ashamed of themselves for
Right.
not
for
speaking out.
working there for so long and not saying anything. But I was having
Oh, that's what their problem is.
yeah,
Right.
I was having nightmares that I was like running into like officers. Like I had a nightmare once, like I ran into an officer, a specific officer on the bus, and I felt the fear and anxiety, like I was there. You know, the dreams and nightmares feel so real. And it was just this like fear, like, oh my God, like this officer sees me, is he gonna recognize me? So it definitely plays an impact on me. And then just this story being out, like I'm not used to all of this. So it's definitely impacted me. And you know, I was scared in the beginning for it to come out because I didn't know, like, am I gonna be safe? Like I have a child, like is anybody gonna try to like threaten me or do something to me? So it was a hard decision to make, and I really thought about it.
But you did good.
Your
Thank you.
conscience is clear.
Just
You might have to
having-
move to a different address.
just
but your
having
conscience
you-
is clear.
Well, thank God I don't. Nothing, knock on wood,
Listen,
hasn't
just
happened.
Having seen you here today, it's done some good for me. To see that, yeah, I've got that. I see that, I always have Victor here, but I never heard about the the flies and the maggots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mental
that
health unit.
stirs your imagination.
That's
But
medieval
even-
torture.
Right, but
it's
even
happening.
the other patients on my units, they would come up to me and they would be like, Justina, we need to do something. Do you see how this person is living? Like, let's try to talk to the officers to get him out. Like, the other patients
for them.
would advocate and saw. Like, one patient was like, I found new clothes for him. Let's talk to so-and-so, because they also knew which officers would let people out. So-and-so hopefully is coming in later. We're gonna talk to that officer. We're gonna tell the officer to open his cell. Slowly, we're gonna show him the clothes, you know. When we open his cell, it's gonna be a shock for him because he's been locked in. But we're gonna do it very slowly and motivate him to come out, to take a shower. Like, the patients would really try to help. Because
More
they
than the
saw,
officers.
yes, because they saw, they're like, this is inhumane. They saw, like, these are really severely mentally ill people. This is just wrong.
Well, that's encouraging to
Yeah.
hear patients
Oh,
and
yeah.
inmates who care for each
Oh,
other
they did,
more
they
so than
did.
the staff that's getting paid
Yeah.
to take care
No,
of
no,
those
they
inmates.
did. They were very concerned. They would like come up to me and be like,
Because it
like,
could
are you-
happen to them.
yeah, like they would be like, this is like crazy. Like we have to do something about it. And I would tell them like, I'm working on it. Don't worry, you know, because I was. But they would come up to me like, what's going on? Like, did you see this?
Did you see it? Did you meet anybody there that was as concerned as you were?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are staff that are concerned, and
Are
I
you
think
just saying that, or did you really
I think people
feel that there was nobody as sensitive as you were? Because you only spent 9 months there.
right. So I think people.
And the money's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a city job. It's great benefits, and it is really good
But I mean, it's good money, isn't it?
it is.
It
yes.
was past tense.
Can you give us some idea of how good the money is?
I mean, it depends on your position, but they do give
I mean, we're
rate.
talking 6 figures?
Yeah.
We're
For-
talking 6 figures?
Yeah, if you're in a high position, like if you're
And
a
she's licensed.
supervisor, director, yeah. Yeah.
Big money to be made, like you said.
So what
is
about the
motive-
correctional officers? What are they
I
making?
don't. I have no idea what they make, but they do a lot of overtime. That's where they
think
make
they're
a lot
like-
of
So
their
they're
money.
making
Started
6
30
figures too?
30.
I think it
90 or
also
90,000
depends on how
yeah.
many years. I'm pretty sure the captains do.
So we're talking about making money. That's
Oh
what
yeah,
you're
they make
talking
money.
about.
And
yeah.
motive for preserving the system as it is.
Yeah.
Because
Because
if,
you're
for
making
instance,
money
1/3 of the budget was
and
given over to
torturing
mental health
people.
professionals, then you're talking about impacting the salaries of the number of people
Right.
who are making $100,000
But we don't
a year
get
now.
paid by DOC because we work through New York City Health and Hospitals, which is the city. So it's separate. Like I wasn't employed by Department of Corrections.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, New York City Health and Hospitals, Correctional Health Services
Okay.
there on Rikers.
CHS.
And we, you know, so it was also like we had to go by what DOC said because we were guests in their house. I couldn't tell the officers, no, you have to do this. I couldn't because this is their house.
Mm.
I could suggest it and talk to them. And like I said, some of them were very open and we worked together, but I couldn't say, no, you need to do this right now. You need to let this individual out.
Well, we got a minute left, and I just want to say thank you
Yeah,
for coming
for sure.
in today.
Thank you.
This is informational, and it's the sign of our times. I mean, we've got a president that's just as heartless, and I say all the time, he's not human. And we, with the heart or the God-centeredness, you know, I always say the God in me loves the God in you, and I'm saying that again today. And we have to take that seriously, because this is the only way we're going to get through this. Love energy. So we have to, I mean, I got to cool myself down, because every time I see Donald Trump, I get angry. I'm ready to fight.
We,
I mean,
we have to
it's
be
gonna
with
happen to all of
like-minded
us.
people who strengthen us.
Yes.
Because there are some people and some media that are giving us lots of ugly
And
pictures.
with that, the God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience.
The good news of the Gilchrist.
Right. Is it a wrap? Is it a wrap?